Hi everyone, Nigel Saunders here. Today I'm going to be pruning up this Thuja planting. It's 3 trees growing over a rock. Here's a look at the trees. So I've let them grow for the entire summer, and you can see some of the shoots are quite long. It looks good and healthy. So today I'm just going to prune it back, making it compact once again. Here is a look at the trunks. So there's 3 trees, and the roots grow over this rock, and there's a lot of weeds. So I think that's where I'll start today, is weeding the planting. I've got my tweezers, so I'll just pull each of these weeds out, trying to get the roots. Some of these weeds are growing right out of the rock, and it's really hard to get rid of them, so you just have to kind of keep picking away at them, and eventually, hopefully, they'll die off. But the roots go right down into the rock. So I had this styled as a land water penjing, and it looked quite nice, but then it all kind of grew in over the summer with weeds and moss, and so hopefully by the end of today I'll get it back to looking really good. And this pot is quite a small pot for these 3 trees, so I don't get like super vigorous growth over the summer, which is good because you don't want the trees growing too vigorously or you get very coarse growth on the trees. So the small pot helps keep them kind of miniature and under control, so they don't get huge long shoots coming off them. And it may be getting a little root bound in here too, which also helps miniaturize the trees. Well, it's looking good around the front now. Let's get to the back here. I've got a little spruce seedling growing in there. It's kind of unusual. Sometimes when moss goes brown like this, it's better just to remove it and then replant fresh moss in its place. It's moss that just dried up in the summer. I just noticed my camera went for a little ride there. The tripod was slowly tilting. Yeah, so I was saying, just take the old moss off and take the old moss off and put some fresh moss in its place. Usually this time of the year the moss grows really well, but we've had a very dry September. So the moss is struggling a little bit, but once we get the rains in fall, it should rebound and green up. Okay, so I've got the planting weeded. It's looking quite nice actually. So next I'm going to work on the trees. Here's a look at the landscape now. So I still haven't done the water part here, but it's cleaned up. Here's an example of pruning. So I've got a new shoot here, and you want to prune it back to some healthy looking foliage. So I would say right about here, trimming that back. And this frond you can see is quite long and vigorous. So again, I'll prune it back to some healthy looking foliage. And then you can also pinch the tips on it to bring it back even more compact. And branches that are lower down in the tree want to be a little more conservative with the pruning, and the ones that are up in the apex you can be a little more aggressive. So that's, about as compact as I can get that new growth. And occasionally, I prune too far and the branch dies off rather than, putting out new growth, but not too often. It's kind of well, you learn by trial and error. You learn how far you can take them back. And most of the time, you're successful, but sometimes it dies off. But there's usually a new branch that grows in and replaces the one that dies off. They're pretty good trees. They're typically used in hedges, so they back bud. And So I just have to keep in mind, you know, keeping an apex for each tree. Here's a vigorous branch over here that can get pruned back quite hard. Especially because it's in the apex and that's where all the energy is. So it's just a combination of scissor pruning and pinching to get the tree compact. And only do it on a strong tree. If the tree's weak, just leave it be. So I need to do a little thinning in the apex here. It's getting quite bushy. So I'm always picking my best branches and pruning away the ones that are crossing or overlapping each other. There's one here that's overlapping. This one can be pruned back. This one can be pruned back. And then I'll pinch it. I've got kind of a double branch here. I think I'm going to take out this upper one. That. I'm going to take out this upper one. So eventually you get, you know, a nice compact apex to the tree. Any branches that are going in towards the tree beside it, you can prune back either really short or prune them right away or right off. So this one, I'm just going to prune it shorter. So pinching. So you can see I'm starting to get some separation between the two trees now. And it's not an easy species to keep small. It's their natural growth is quite loose. So yeah, it takes a lot of kind of maintenance work and pinching to keep them compact. And you don't want to keep them compact all the time or they'll lose vigor. So you know, kind of alternate keeping them compact maybe one summer. The next summer let them grow a little more freely and you'll eventually get a nice tree in the end. If you're pinching it and keeping it compact all the time, they can lose vigor, just like any tree. And you know, you don't want the tree to lose vigor, you want to keep it strong. And there's a lot of factors, like this year, because it's probably root bound and it's in a small pot, I've let it grow a little more freely. If it was going in a show, I might prune it back a little more over the summer, but it's good for it to grow like this. Yeah, so hopefully you can see the progress so far. It's there's a lot of work to go. There's a lot of branches on this tree. So it'll take me a while. Which is okay because I like pruning up the trees. Especially after a summer of growing, it's nice to see them back to shape. You see there was a weaker branch there that died off. And you can use directional pruning. Like here's a branch that's crossing the trunk line. So I've got better shoots fanning out, so I'll take that right off. Like that. And as you go down lower on the tree, you prune less because the vigor is up in the apex. So when you're pruning, there's a lot of factors. You know, there's the overall silhouette of the tree, there's the direction of the branches, the zone of vigor, and you've got to keep all these things in mind as you prune the tree up. So never be in a rush to prune your tree, just do it when you have lots of time and going to take this branch out. It's crossing the trunk line. Yeah, when you have lots of time and enjoy working on the tree, rather than trying to rush and get it done, which is always a recipe for disaster. You want to make good decisions if possible. And you won't notice your decisions until the tree starts growing again. And you'll see, if you've done a really good pruning, the new growth will come in a good direction and the tree will look better. If you do poor pruning, it gets bushy and you won't get the growth where you want it. Now here's one that's very loose. So I'm going to take the center out of it. And all you can do with, a branch that's really long and leggy is just wait until new growth comes in and then prune it back to that new growth. It'll come eventually. And you can't be worried about making mistakes or regrets. Just once you've pruned it, then you work with what you have. It's done. And you can watch how the new growth comes in, and you can see how successful your pruning was. If you took branches back too far, if it's balanced the vigor coming in. So, be observant at all times with your trees. That's how you learn. So this branch, it's a nice sweeping branch, and it has an upwards part which is very vigorous. And it looks quite nice. It looks like it's blowing with the wind. So in this case, I'm going to keep that part. Just reduce this back. Reduce this back. And I'll take out the central leader. Take the tips back. So making it compact, but keeping the styling, the sweeping branch, like that. Because it'll grow in again. You don't want them too long. Now I've got to deal with the apex of this tree. A nice little branch here. But I think the better choice is this one. It's pretty strong though. I've got to prune this back at least to here. Here. Don't forget this is the apex, so it's vigorous. This branch is too long. It's going to get pruned back. So it's looking better. It's slowly getting there. Okay, it's looking much better. I think I'm 95% done now. Let's step back and have a look at the tree and see if I need to do any tweaking to the styling. Here's a look at the tree, and here's what I took off the tree. So I would say I probably took 60% of the foliage off, some vigorous branches, a lot of tip pinching, reducing vigorous shoots back. Yeah, so the tree is looking good. Let's see it from the front view now. Here's a look at the trees now. So yeah, I think it has a bit of a wind-blown look. The shoreline. These trees aren't very big. They're about 3 hands high. But I think they look quite miniature. And it has a bit of a style to it, and that's a style I'll continue developing into the future. In the future, some of these branches will get more mature. There'll be more refinement to come. So the last thing I want to do is reestablish the land water penjing. So I'll have to add moss to where I took it off to make the moss look a little better. and add some more sand and get rid of the moss in the water section. I've added some moss to the landscape, replacing all that dead moss with new nice fresh green moss. So now I can add the sand to represent the water edge here, and that will complete the landscape work. Okay, here goes the sand. The sand's wet, I guess. When I was watering the trees, it must have dripped down into the sand. That's okay. I can apply it wet or dry. It just gives a hint of a shoreline. It's, nothing too dramatic, but this is a very small planting. Okay, so I'll water that, and it should hopefully look a bit like a shoreline. Okay, here I go with the water. Just water that sand in, level it out. Whole planting of watering, trees and all. I've completed the work on my root over rock Thuja planting. So let's fly in now and have a look at the trees. I really enjoy this small Thuja planting. It's really nice to look at and explore with your eyes. And it shows that you don't need, great big giant trees to enjoy bonsai. You can have small miniature trees that gives you the same feeling as a large planting. So that's all for today. I'm Nigel Saunders. Thanks for joining me in the Bonsai Zone.